PTA meeting. All right, any questions simply to help you?
And then you guys already took your first exam, so congrats.
Objectives, 3. 1, trace the pathways of blood through the heart and the vessels of coronary circulation. So we've talked about going through the heart as in passing from body tissues in through the right atrium, out to the heart, and then out to the body tissues. We briefly talked about the actual vessels involved in coronary circulation in lab, but we didn't really talk too much about blood flow through them. So we're going to go over that today, review those vessels. Then we want to talk about the actual cardiac cycle. There are 3 pieces to it, but it's a cycle. So it's going to do what? Going and going and going. All right. We also want to start talking about the cardiac conduction system. It'll be an intro, and we'll go over more stuff later. Last but not least, identify the parts of a normal ECG pattern. It's ECG or EKG. It's basically just the Latin. Anyone know why we usually use EKG? Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So that's what I was talking about with the Latin, but do you know why it's ECG here, but we usually don't use ECG? Do you know why we don't use ECG? So electroencephalogram is a pretty similar acronym, and you don't want to use the wrong test on somebody. And so it differentiates it better to have a K, or that's what I've been told. You heard anything otherwise? Yeah. Okay. All right. So just a little quick review. We were going over this the last time we were together. My foot's bothering me, so I have socks on right now. Anyway, just thinking, they're cool. Look at them. They're like medical. They have stethoscopes and everything. Yeah, thank you. All right, now that's recorded. Whatever. All right, let's start with the right atrium. So right atrium is colored blue. Why is it colored blue? They're probably pretty deoxygenated, but is there probably still a little bit of oxygen in there? Yeah, probably a little bit. Just not a ton. So right atrium. Then we're going through the valve, and you can kind of follow it as you're going through over here. So we're on the right side. So what valve is this going to be? Tricuspid valve. We're also on the right side, so that's the right atrioventricular valve, and that's going to move into the right ventricle. For the right ventricle, we're going to compress. That's going to close the tricuspid valve, and we're entering into the pulmonary valve. The pulmonary valve is in what artery? It's not called an artery. Very good. That's going to be the pulmonary trunk, but you do need to understand it is an artery, and it is going to branch into the right and left pulmonary arteries. Then we're going to have gas exchange within the alveolar capillaries of the lung, and we'll get into a lot more detail of that in our respiratory system, how that occurs. Next, we're hitting our left and right pulmonary veins. How many pulmonary veins do you have on each side? 2. So remember, there are 2 pairs. All right, then we're heading back into the heart. So we want to head in through our left atrium. Then what valve are we going to go through? Very good. Bicuspid, mitral, or left atrioventricular valve. Good. Then we're heading into the left ventricle. That's going to compress. We're going to shut our bicuspid valve, and we're moving into the aortic valve, into the aorta, into the systemic capillaries, and then we can enter into the right atrium through 3 different ways. What's that going to be? What's taking blood from the head and this area in? Superior vena cava. What's taking up from the lower body tissues? Inferior vena cava. And then we have the coronary circulation, so that's going to be the coronary sinus. Very good. So we'll get into more detail about that today. So that's a nice little chart to kind of help you flow through, and it also shows you the pattern. It's kind of pretty, the red. Kind of like America, red and blue all over the page. All right, so let's start getting into blood supply to the heart. And again, another name for blood supply to the heart is what circulation? Coronary circulation. Very good. We got coronary arteries. Those are the 2 main ones coming off of the aorta, starting giving the blood, giving the heart the blood that it needs. All right, so the first two branches are the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery. All right, guys, you ready for it? This is some serious design here. This is one of my favorite parts of talking about the human body. All right, left ventricle, right? So it's pushing up blood through the aorta. Look at the placement. All right. Well, it's here, right there, but you can see it directly because you have to understand this is coming back from under here. The pulmonary trunk's in the way for you to see it. Look at where those vessels are placed. Do you notice the three semilunar valve caps right there? All right. So you gotta think about what's happening here. I don't have three hands, but I have two. All right. So left ventricle pumps, right? Tons of pressure. That's your systolic blood pressure. It's the highest pressure you're going to receive in the body. All right, so that's going to push the semilunar valve open. But guess what? Right underneath where that's being pushed open is your coronary artery. So guess what? As pressure begins to fall, blood is going to try to backflow, right? That valve is going to slam shut so that we don't have any go into the left ventricles, but those two arteries are perfectly placed so blood slams down through those two arteries and feeds the heart. Isn't that super cool? Like they're perfectly placed for that to happen. There's no leakage. That there should not be any leakage or anything like that. So that's going to slam down, and then we're going to go from here, and we're going to go off to our different branches so that we can feed 3D all the way around our heart. So let's talk about our coronary arteries. So starting off with the right coronary artery, we understand where that's coming down on the right side. It's right up there from your aorta. There are two main branches that I want you to know for that. The one is the posterior interventricular artery. I didn't put anything on the front side of the heart. The main area where you can actually see it, because it's going to wrap around here, the main area you can see it is on the posterior side. And do you remember what the sulcus is called? Very good. Posterior interventricular sulcus. Very good. So it's going to run along through there, and then since we're on the back side, the middle cardiac vein is going to run right along parallel to that. So the posterior interventricular artery is primarily supplying the posterior ventricles, right? It's running right in between them. I don't know where else it would be able to supply. All right, and then we have the marginal artery, or the right marginal branch. I don't care which way you call it. I don't even know what I'll write it on the exam. You can guarantee marginal is going to be in it. Anyway, it's going to supply the right atrium and the right ventricle. And that's going to make sense because right here is the right atrium, right? And so it's branching down off your right coronary. So your right coronary artery, it comes down the bottom across the right atrium, and then it's going to circle around to the back. But the major component is right here, so I didn't mark it up there. Anyway, we can see the marginal branch. Notice I color coded for you. All right, so the marginal artery, or the right marginal branch, is going to be in orange. All right, so that's the main thing you need to know for the right coronary artery branches. Those are the two that branch off. I can guarantee you I'll ask you questions about all these different arteries on the exam. All right, the left coronary artery is going to branch into two main branches that we want to be aware of. One is going to be the circumflex artery, and the other one is the anterior interventricular artery. So we can primarily see that on the anterior side, but we can also see where the circumflex is still coming around the heart on the posterior side. But as I discussed in lab, the left coronary artery is very short or long. Short, especially comparatively to the right, is going to branch very quickly, and therefore we must name it two different names, of course. So I don't know what that means. That happened all the time your freshman year too. All right, so that's going to supply. If you look, we have the anterior interventricular artery, so that's going to supply this area here in between our two ventricles on the anterior side, and then we also have the circumflex artery, so that's going to supply the left atrium and left ventricle. Does that make sense? It's pretty easy to see where they supply because it's right where they are located. So those are the major arteries of the heart that we want to be aware of. Then we have the veins. So the cardiac veins are going to be very important for draining blood from the myocardium. And so if you haven't noticed, the pathway of the veins lie almost absolutely parallel to the arteries of our heart. All right, so all of these veins are ultimately going to drain into a sinus. Now, the coronary sinus is a vein itself, and it's going to go into our right atrium so that we can take it back down through the right ventricle and out to the lump so we can reoxygenate with blood. If you look at the posterior side of the heart, you can actually see each one of your cardiac veins there, the 3 cardiac veins. Anyway, starting from the front side where we have the marginal branch coming down from the right coronary artery, we're going to have the small cardiac vein. So that's going to be right here. The ginormous vein, yeah, that's a word, of the heart. It's going to run parallel to the anterior interventricular artery. You guys have to remember what it's called. The largest vein, largest cardiac vein, right here, paralleling the anterior interventricular artery. Yeah, it's a great cardiac vein. Very good. And then the middle cardiac vein really can only be seen on the posterior side, and it's going to be running parallel to the posterior interventricular artery. So it's going to be picking up all the waste and things that have been deposited basically by our cardiomyocytes in that area. That's really annoying. All right. So I gave you a little chart. This will be very helpful. I'm planning on giving you guys a worksheet on Friday that you can work on in here if we have time, and also take over the weekend, that will be due on Monday when you walk into the class. All right, no later than that. And if you don't turn it in, as I've had students do in the past, and then come to my office later and tell me I forgot to turn it in, lies, they get 0. So don't do that. Just turn it in with whatever you have done. But I know that you're going to get done. We're not going to worry about it. Anyway, this is going to be really helpful. My only reservation with this diagram right here is the fact that it just says cardiac veins. And I want you to know the specific ones. Now, one challenge to the worksheet that you're going to have is there are actually 4 of them because they parallel each one of your coronary arteries. You will need to look up, it won't be hard, I promise you. You will need to look up the 4th vein that I don't actually make you memorize. So there's another one outside the great, middle, and small cardiac veins. All right. Break check. From what vessel do the right and left coronary arteries branch? Very good. The aorta. Everybody says aorta, right? Great. All right. From what vessel does the circumflex artery branch? Are we awake? Great. It's going to branch from the left coronary artery. And what vessels are directly responsible for bringing in deoxygenated blood from the body cells to the heart? Very good. The vena cava, superior and inferior vena cava. All right, nice job. All right, let's start getting into heart actions. All right, so the heart chambers must act in a regulated, coordinated manner. Otherwise, heart's not going to be able to properly get blood from one chamber to the other and to each location. So we have systole, which I'm sure you guys have heard of systole and diastole. We all know about systole and diastole. All right. One's what? There you go. I thought you said relaxation. All right. So one is contraction, the other is relaxation. So systole, but we have different contractions. So what is it actually referring to? We have contraction of each one of our chambers, right? Very good. Specifically, it is going to be ventricular contraction. All right, at least with reference to what we take. So whenever you have the blood pressure, you have what over what? Systole over, very good, or systolic over diastolic, either one. So what is normal blood pressure? that one's elevated. Yeah, 120 over 80. When you get up to anything above 129 and it's still over 80, that's elevated blood pressure. So if it's from 130 to I think isn't 140, that's going to be elevated. And then you have two different stages of hypertension. I think it's 140 to 149, and then 150 and above, you're in stage 2 hypertension. And at that point, you really need to do something about it if it's skyrocketing above that. And then the diastolic is like stage 1. I think it's above. It's going to be like 140 over 89, and then it elevates it just a little bit more if you go up to the other. Anyway, you don't want to have hypertension. So systole, it is the contraction of a heart chamber, and diastole is going to be the relaxation. When we talk about those terms, though, we are only talking about ventricular diastole. That's going to be the greater number. If we looked at atrial, it would be much lower. The atria aren't going to be having as much pressure as the ventricles. All right, so the cardiac cycle is going to be the events that occur during an actual heartbeat, and we hope that it's going to go over and over and over. All right, so in the first action, we're going to have where the atria are going to contract. So we just said that a contraction is going to be systole, right? So your first event is going to be systole. At this time, it is true, the ventricles are going to relax, so it's ventricular diastole, but at this point, we're naming atrial systole. So that is step number 1. Step number 2 is going to be the ventricles contracting, so that's going to be ventricular systole. And at that point, obviously, the atria are going to relax. Any idea what the third one might be? Yeah. Anybody? Complete diastole. Now, this isn't going to last very long, but there is, I'm going to say, a pinpoint moment in time. So we're first, again, we're having atria contract, ventricles are going to contract, completely relaxation. And that's just to, basically, it restarts the electrical signal up at the SA node. So we're at a brief relaxation, and then we start one more time. And that's basically at the end of repolarization, but we'll get to that in just a minute. I did provide a video because, again, I can only do so much with talking with my hands up here in 2D diagrams. So I did give you a good video of the cardiac cycle. Just keep in mind when I give you videos, if they give you extra information, I'm not testing you on the video. I'm just trying to give you a better depiction of what is going on in whatever organ we're studying. So, I actually don't know anybody personally that's had a heart transplant, but they are able to do it, right? Somebody has a broken heart. If it's emotional, go see a counselor. They can fix you. All right. If somebody does need a heart replacement, though, I want you to think about this. The heart, I mean, it's situated in there, right? It's a vital organ, and we have blood vessels coming out of it. So we're going to have to clip part of those blood vessels. Otherwise, how could you replace anything? So what blood vessels are we going to have to clip? Very good. Say aorta. Pulmonary what? You said pulmonary. Is there one pulmonary artery? Pulmonary trunk. So we have the aorta, the pulmonary trunk. What else are we going to have to clip? Very good. Each one of the vena cava. So you're going to have to clip the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Now, do you think it's pretty hard to get a heart transplant? Yeah, because after a person is deceased for very long, is that heart going to be able to restart? No. So a lot of times it's going to be, it has to be like right after someone has a heart, like a car accident and they're an organ donor or they're in the hospital and something goes wrong to where they can immediately take that heart and basically put it in an environment where I think it's still pumping blood and be able to transport it to the next person. So because so few and far between, we do have a few things that can be used to kind of help us in the meantime, but they're not going to function for that long. One of them, have you guys heard of the LVAD? Yeah, so it's the left ventricular assist device. It's basically a mechanical half heart, so that's cool. It's used in just for temporary cases until the donor heart is going to be available. This This is not going to last the person for the rest of their lives, especially if they're fairly young. But can be helpful. So here's a picture of that. We also have an implantable replacement heart. And this is just basically made out of titanium, and that way hopefully the body is not going to react to it, and also the metal is not going to erode in the body. And it's mixed with plastic. And so she's people that actually cannot have a heart transplant. And like I said, you're not going to want to give this to somebody that's 30, 40, 50 years old, because likely they're going to have maybe hopefully another 20, 30, 40 years of their life. This is for someone that may only have a couple of years to live anyway. Yeah, they have a lot of other complications, but allows them to be able to live a little bit longer. So an implantable replaceable heart, yeah, I know, it looks pretty funky, huh? That was actually one of the first ones that were made in, what does it say, 1968. They've been modified a little bit since then. I think that looks almost like scuba gear, but anyway. All right, and most recently, but I haven't looked up in the last few months what they're doing right now, but we do have stem cell technology. So what they're trying to do is actually culture cardiac muscle cells. So they're trying to help, they're trying to figure out what factors can be placed to turn stem cells into basically cardiomyocytes, which would be really cool, a regenerative type of thing. So they either alter somatic cells or use stem cells. So what they're trying to do is allow for stem cell heart patches to be placed in the future. So like if a person, if they have like necrosis of some of the cardiac muscle tissue, they will be able to put this patch in there to replace that and help it to become in sync with the rest of the heart. So that would be really, really cool. Don't know where we're at with that. I definitely wouldn't be able to afford it at this point, probably just the rich, but maybe eventually it'll trickle on down to the peons. All right. You guys have studied this before, looking at our cardiac muscle cells. They have one central nucleus, they have branch networks, and their one extremely special feature is going to be the intercalated discs, and those are going to be found between each one of our cardiomyocytes. We have two special different types of junctions between cells. One is going to be a desmosome. I know if you have me for MP1, you learned all about this. You learned about tight junctions, you learned about desmosomes. Don't shake your head. And you also learned about gap junctions. All right, so your tight junctions were like having a belt that's with your cells that are packed very close together in sheets. Desmosomes, we said, were like spot welds. So you think about a welder welding two pieces together. So that's really important for constant abrasion. Does that happen in the heart? Yeah. And then the last type was gap junctions. So gap junctions are important because between these cells, they're muscle cells, right? So they're going to be going through depolarization, repolarization, and hopefully hitting a threshold so we can send an electrical signal. Electrical signals are created and sent because of differences in action potential. So we have differences in ions on one side or another. Gap junctions are going to be important in facilitating that. We'll leave it at that. We're not going to get any more complex than that. But anyway, we're going to have intercollected discs, desmosomes, gap junctions that are going to be helping with our network of cells so that we can create, it's called a syncticum. So it's where all of them are pumping together. Well, that was my next point. All right, they form a functional syncticum, which is a mass of merging cells that are going to function as a unit. We have two major masses that are going to exist in the heart. One is going to be located at the atrial walls, and so that's going to be our atrial syncticum, and the other one is going to be at the ventricular walls, ventricular syncticum. Because if you guys remember me talking about, we have a double pump, right? So atria all need to contract at one time, and ventricles all need to contract at one time. We're going to talk a little bit more about the motion as we continue going. But each one of them are going to contract, hopefully, in syncticum. So all together, all together. All right. Yay, muscle tissue. Let's play a game. Yay. What type of muscle tissue is this one? You only have 3 choices. Skeletal, cardiac, or smooth? Cardiac. You should know. You're doing tissues right now, girlie. That's cardiac. All right. So we have branch network. You can kind of see the nuclei in the middle. There definitely aren't more than one nuclei. We can see, what are these guys? Intercalated disc. And we also have striations, which is found in cardiac cells as well as skeletal. All right. With that being said, well, there you go. That's skeletal. You're listening. All right. So each one of these is one skeletal muscle cell. So they are multi-nucleated, and they have striations. Now, these striations, yes, they're present and they're perpendicular to the longitudinal axis, just like these are within the cardiac muscle tissue. But we do not have intercalated discs because we are working through a totally different system using calcium and whatnot. So we have binding and actin and myosin and pull and all of that stuff. If you want to go back to that, come visit my AFP1 class in like a month. Anyway, then the very top must be smooth muscle tissue. So those are going to be muscle spindles. That was just a fun little activity to remind you of different types of muscle tissue. But we're going to be concentrating on the bottom. This is a picture I actually took upstairs. It was Sawyer's year, I remember. And this is going to be cardiac muscle tissue. So with this, we can see we have the nuclei in approximately the center. There's some branching going on right there. You can't see the striations very well, but you can see the intercalated discs. All right. And we said those disposomes, especially the gap junctions, are really important for being able to signal electrical signals. They're going to help us in order to create an action potential. So that brings us into the cardiac conduction system. All right. So this system involves a very specialized group of cardiac muscle cells, cardiomyocytes, that initiate and distribute cardiac action potentials through the myocardium, which is the muscle section, right? Talked about the epicardium, myocardium, and endocardium. We're in the myocardium right now. There are 7 major components that you need to be able to list in order. Number 1 is called the SA node or the sinoatrial node. And we can see it right up here at the top of what atrium is this? Very good. This is going to be the top of the right atrium. So he's going to be receiving an electrical signal. There's an action potential that goes through. We have reached threshold, etc. And so we're going to send a signal through. He is our pacemaker. So he is going to initiate the rhythmic contractions. Now, really cool, if something happens to the SA node, the body is going to try to compensate for that, right? It wants to survive. So we have an AV node, which is the atrioventricular node. All right, so it's going to be right here. It can try to take over. Not going to be as good as the original, but it can try to make things work at least for a while. All right, anyway, so we're going to start our signal with the SA node. From there, we are going to interact with internodal atrial muscle. And this is going to be important because it's going to conduct the impulses from the SA node to the atria. And notice, we're going to go through the interatrial septum because we need both atria to be contracting at the same time and syncing them. And like you said, the SA node is only going to be at the top of the right atrium. So this is going to allow for electrical signal to go all the way across through that muscle. Junctional fibers are going to help that too. It's going to conduct the impulses from the SA node to the AV node. So we're going to kind of branch out, and then the junctional fibers are going to bring us back around, as you can see. And then we want our signal to be hitting this guy right here, which is the AV node. All right, so it is going to have the responsibility of then conducting signals to the AV bundle. Now, we're going to have a delay, though, in response here. Now, all right, so we have the SA node. We're going to hit the atria so that we have atrial syncope. Everybody's in it together, woohoo. And we're sending the signal down here, but we slow up. Why would we slow up? You can read my PowerPoint. You think about what's happening during this time period. The the on each side, both of our AV valves are going to be open. They're going to let blood come through. But we still have to make a contraction, right? And so we are sending a signal all over the atria so that we can contract all at the same time. But in order to make sure that that contraction is complete and we get all of the blood out, we have a delay at the AV node. Now, as soon as that contraction is done, we're back in business again. So we're going to send the signal then from our AV node to the atrioventricular bundle, or this can also be called the bundle of His. That's how I learned it, but as with a lot of things you're going to hear in anatomy, the pancreatic islets, they used to be Langerhans. We're trying to convert from a person's name or kind of an off idea to something that's actually representative of what is happening or what the structure looks like. So we call it the AV bundle. And then this is going to conduct impulses rapidly between the SA node and the bundle branches. So we slowed up right here, and then we're going to shoot down, and whoo, they're really going to go down the slide. They're going to go down both of our bundle branches. And then you notice we're going to hit the apex, and we're going to start coming back up around the sides. So left and right bundle branches split. And what structure are we going down with those bundle branches? What is that in the heart? You told it to me yesterday, Brian. I made you label it in words on your heart. Interventricular, you got that for me.
Oh.
Very good. Like 3 of you said it. Great job. Interventricular septum. So we're going to go all the way around. And then we're going to conduct impulses to what we call Purkinje fibers. And these are large fibers that are going to be conducting impulses to the ventricular myocardium. And they're going to start at the apex down here. So we come down our bundle branches. And then do you see these little yellow kind of squiggles coming up through the papillary muscles and everything? Those are coming up through the myocardium. And they're going to contract in a world-like motion. So the way to think about that is whenever you were little, I'm sure that you did this, we did. Your neighbors or you had a circular pool, right? And what do? You go around, right? You run around it, and you create a circle, and you create this little whirlpool, right? All right, so whirl is talking about this circular twisting motion. That's what your heart is going to do, and you can see it better right here. This is the way that the ventricular walls are going to be shaped with muscle. So you know how I told you before the heart kind of contracts in a twist? It really does. And the electrical impulses are going to allow it to do that. We were designed that way. I can't exactly explain why, other than that's probably the most efficient way for the heart to actually work. All right, to make sure that all the blood goes out and probably at the appropriate pressure as well. So this is just a little diagram. It doesn't contain all the parts I really want you to know, but what this diagram is emphasizing is the syncticum that's occurring. So we're going from the SA node, which is also called the what maker of the heart? Pacemaker of the heart. Then we're heading down so that we have atrial syncticum. Then hopefully we're going to hit junctional fibers to our AV node. Now our AV node, what happens there? Going to slow down to wait for the atria to fully contract, get all the blood out, whatnot. All right, and then we're heading down to the AV bundle. Once we hit that bundle, no going back. Heading down the interventricular septum, through the right and left bundle branches, headed down to the apex, into the Purkinje fibers, and then hopefully we're going to have ventricular syncticum. And then what's going to happen? Go over and over again, because your heart never stops beating, right? Not until you did. Bless you. Yeah, see, look at that. I got the devils out for you. You guys know that's why they say bless you, right? You guys know that? Yeah? They used to believe that whenever you sneezed, right, it allowed for the devils to come into your heart whenever you were sneezing. So they would say bless you to keep the devils out. And it has carried on for years. Because obviously you guys don't even know about it. All right. What you learned in anatomy class. All right, so let's talk about the electrocardiogram since we are talking about the cardiac conduction system. So we have the ECG, or I usually say the EKG. So it's a recording of the electrical changes that occur in the myocardium during a cardiac cycle. So it's going to be represented as deflections. And I'm sure you guys have heard of like the P wave, QRS, the T wave, and then the different manipulations of that and whatnot. So why do we take an EKG? Why? What is it? It is a measure of the electroconductivity. All right, yes, Brian?
For athletes, you could take a test like at the start of your season before you come in.
Good.
As you come to see, make sure everything's all right.
Absolutely. Yes, Elise?
I was just gonna say that we can show abnormalities. Just give you a video of going on a patient.
Exactly. Yep. So all three of you are absolutely correct. Anyone else want to add to it? All right, my turn. All right, so first, it can be used as a diagnostic procedure or to determine, hey, do we need to run other tests? Do they need maybe some sort of medication to get them back into rhythm? Do they need to be shocked? You're going to know that hopefully before you do EKG. But anyway, so it can be used for that. Also, routine monitoring. If somebody has had an abnormality in the past, we give them some sort of medication or put them on some sort of different lifestyle change. We want to be able to see, hey, is it effective or is it getting worse? So we can do something else. And Elise is absolutely right. We can detect a lot of different types of abnormalities, whether it be bradycardia, tachycardia. We can look and see when maybe there's a ventricular issue versus an atrial issue, because those are going to have different outcomes whenever you're looking at an EKG based on which wave that is going to impact. All right. So the deflections are going to occur different types of waves. So the P wave is going to be for atrial depolarization, and this is going to occur right before the atria actually contract. And if you think about it, talk about action potentials. You have depolarization right before the action potential occurs and you send the signal. Oh, so this is going to be atrial depolarization right prior to having atrial contraction. Right, so that is going to be your P wave. That's your down there. All right. Then we have the QRS complex, which it's a complex, so we have multiple waves. You're going to have three waves that are going to be involved: Q, R, and S. This is going to occur during ventricular depolarization. So same thing, we're going to depolarize, action potential rises so that we can have contraction. So right prior to ventricular contraction. Wait a second, we never repolarize the atria. Why not? Any guesses prior to reading? I just did right there. All right. It actually is happening, but we don't really have any record of it looking at our EKG, and that's because the repolarization is actually hidden within this large QRS complex. The deflection is so much different that you can't even see the impact of the atria heading down. Its ventricles are going to be going in the opposite direction, so we don't see it. Is it there? Yeah, but we just can't detect it. And that's just because the ventricular depolarization is such a large event in comparison to atrial repolarization. And their last little wave at the end is going to be ventricular repolarization. And this is going to occur just prior to relaxation or diastole of the ventricle. So you can kind of see in this process, it's the cardiac cycle. We have atrial what comes first? Atrial systole, ventricular systole, and then complete diastole. So complete diastole is right at basically the end of that repolarization. All right, really nice, dude. So here's that video on the cardiac cycle. All right, I think that's enough. Please keep in mind homework for chapter 15 as well as the smart book is available. I put this up before you guys finished your lab yesterday, so good job.